So today we'll be working in my workbook called The 40 Days of Resurrected Life, which is a comprehensive look of the 40 days between Jesus's life from resurrection to ascension. It takes all four gospels and puts them in chronological order, which is really cool actually, because each one has a witness part to the story. Last week, we did chapter 1 last week, which was the early morning on the tomb. And this is the early we started on the events of the first resurrection Sunday. So many events just on one day that most of our workbook has to do with just that one day. In our first chapter, we see the events that happened before the sun even rose in the very early hours of the day. Soldiers were guarding the tomb so that no one would steal the body. But they now become the first actual eyewitnesses of the miracles. While they were guarding, they see the stone in front of the tomb rolled away, and an angel sitting upon the stone, and they feel a violent earthquake. While they run into Jerusalem, there were four ladies who were bringing spices to anoint Jesus's body for burial. Somehow they each took a different route, the ladies and the soldiers, to the tomb or from the tomb of Jesus, as neither saw each other. Some of the soldiers will tell the chief priests, who will then tell them to lie about what they have seen. When the four ladies got to the tomb, they saw the stone rolled away. One lady immediately left, while the other three looked inside and saw two angels. The angels told them to look where Jesus no longer laid in the tomb, that is, see the physical evidence, and then go back to where the others are hiding, which we assume was the upper room, and tell them that Jesus will meet them in Galilee. As the women hurried away, they met Jesus again on the pathway and became the very first group to see the resurrected Jesus. And they were actually able to touch him as they worshiped at his feet. So now we're going to continue the story with chapter 2. Peter, John, and Mary at the tomb. And this helps us understand what happened to the fourth lady that was there. This is John 20, 1 through 18.
Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance.
Right. So she is the fourth woman. And when she came to see the stone rolled away, she didn't bother to wait. She immediately ran back to Peter and John. And was Mary alone when she went to the tomb of Jesus?
No, Mary and Salome was with her.
Yeah, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Salome and Joanna actually were with her. There was another, okay, which is the answer number 2. There was another woman with them as well. Who was she? That's Joanna.
Yeah.
We don't know much about Joanna, although she's shown a little more in the movie The Chosen, but we don't know much about her. This scripture says it was dark, and yet Mark 16:2 says the sun has just risen. If both are correct, how do you explain this?
Both can be true, because if it's like early morning, like sunrise, it's dark and then getting morning,
Right. Well, this is the reason why when two scriptures kind of contradict each other, we need to look at them and say, how can both be true? And that's true.
Yeah.
That when the sun just first gets up, they're going to probably start before the sun comes up in order to get there in time.
I mean, it's kind of a tricky question, but makes you think deep.
Right.
To think deep. It's like, yeah, how can that be true? Well, yeah, if it's dark and it's still becoming morning.
Right. That's the whole point of it. What did Mary Magdalene find when she went to the tomb?
The stone was removed from the entrance.
Right. So we're just hearing her version of it. This sounds as though she's the only one that had come to the tomb, but we do know that she was part of the 4 that came to the tomb. We're just hearing her story. And this is from John, who, of course, is the one that she got, John and Peter.
So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him."
Right. So this is the first assumption they make. None of them assumed that he actually rose from the dead. It was customary never to identify yourself in your own writings, since the Apostle John wrote this book then he is the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved. So who did Mary Magdalene come running to?
Simon Peter.
Right. What did Mary say to them?
They have taken the Lord out of the tomb and we don't know where he is.
A lot of people are very active early this special morning. Let's see what is happening at the same time. What are the other three women that went to the tomb with Mary experiencing right about this time?
Seen a young man clothed in white.
Right. Yes. All the activity to and from the Garden of Gethsemane, and nobody crosses paths. How does that happen? I don't know. But the women must have taken a certain route, different than Mary, who went to find Peter and John. So they're coming back as Peter and John and Mary are going to go forward to the tomb. It's very funny how this all lines up in different ways. What are the soldiers who were guarded the tomb doing right about this time?
Went to the chief priest and told him everything.
Right. So they're right at the chief priest and telling them everything. So timing. This is just fascinating timing.
So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first.
So Mary Magdalene will follow these two to the tomb. Who ran to the tomb?
Peter and John.
Why did they run to the tomb?
Jesus' body being gone.
Yeah. And who got to the tomb first?
John.
The other women were not there when John and Peter arrived. What is probably happening to them at this time?
Jesus was in front of them.
Probably. Who follows behind these two men to the tomb?
Mary Magdalene.
Right.
He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying.
Right. And there was a lot actually having to do with the cloth here, because it was as if he had just evaporated out of it, not torn in two. They didn't have time to wrap the body in burial, but they had, basically put him in and had wrapped him a little bit in cloth. And so, they had to, but the cloth was not like torn in pieces. So the body was taken. And if someone was stealing the body, they wouldn't take time to take the cloth off. So the more you think about this, the more stronger the evidence is. But I find it interesting that the women saw the angels and the men don't see the angels.
Yeah.
The men just see the evidence of the cloth. So in essence, a lot of times what I'm seeing is the women are given the information before the men are, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But then they do. Oh, no, not they do. Okay. So now they leave because they're going back to the disciples.
Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they put him."
Right. So, yes, so Peter and John leave, go running back to wherever. Mary stays outside the tomb and she's just crying. And she's the one that sees the angels. The men don't see the angels. She sees the angels. And they ask her, "Why are you crying?" Because to them, this is an exciting event. This is ecstatic. But the humans haven't got it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
She says, "I've taken my Lord away and I don't know where they've put him." So, so it's a matter of trying to explain to these dense humans what has happened. Why was Mary crying?
Jesus was gone.
Yeah. Who did she see when she looked into the tomb?
2 angels.
Who she didn't see was John and Peter, so they had left before she had arrived. Where had they gone?
Where they were staying.
Yeah. What did the angel ask Mary?
Why are you crying?
How did Mary respond to the angel's question?
They have taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they put him.
Yeah, who else has these angels talked to?
The other women.
Right. So they show up for the women, but not for the men.
At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him."
Why did she think he was the gardener instead of Jesus? There's two answers that we can look at. First, he could be in the shadows or something where she doesn't fully see him. And the other is that he has changed his appearance so she doesn't recognize him. Okay. Now, if this was the only situation that this is going to happen, then we could say, well, he was in the shadows. She just didn't get it until he talked. But we have other situations where he changes his appearance. So I will tell you what Bible scholars believe is that we also, because a lot of what Jesus will have and the ability to do here is what we think our resurrected bodies will be able to do too. So far, we know he can be touched, just like the women touched him. So far, but this idea of changing your appearance throws everybody a little bit. We think, Bible scholars generally think, it isn't totally changing your appearance, but maybe changing how old you are at what time. For instance, if I've had people who knew me that are dead clear back when I was a child. If they saw me now, would they recognize me? Maybe not,
Right.
but they might recognize me as a child, or they might recognize me as a young person. So we feel like we have that ability to change our looks within the realm of what we look like, not change into a cat or a totally different person or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what we generally Bible scholars believe, is that you aren't really changing, but you're changing based on who you're with and what person you want to of you that you want to be at that time. That's all we can figure it out. We don't know for sure. Or
Wow.
if maybe Jesus only has this option and we're always the same age as we were when we died. I don't think so. I think we get our best bodies, so we get to do what we want to do as long as it's us. I don't know. So there are two, yeah, and I said that there's two possibilities for why Mary did not immediately recognize Jesus. First, it's possible he was standing in the shadow and therefore not fully recognizable. The second is that in his glorified body, which is what we will have after rapture, he can change his appearance. Did Mary recognize Jesus right away?
No.
Who did she think it was?
Gardener.
What did Jesus ask?
"Woman, why are you crying?"
And what was Mary's response?
"Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him."
Right.
Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Arabic, Rabboni, which means
Rabboni.
teacher. Rabboni? Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God."
Right. Some of this we don't fully get, but one thing we know, she could hold on to him. So he's not just a spirit. She can actually hold on to him. But he says, don't hold on to me, for I've yet ascended to the Father. We kind of picture this as, you need to let me go so I can do more things here. You can't hold on to me forever. I need to be in other places too. Because he's not going to ascend for another 40 days. And so that doesn't necessarily make sense. But we do think that, she didn't want to let go of him. She wasn't going to let go at all. And he says, no, you have to let me go so we can do, it's like the guys who stood, well, we haven't gotten there yet. So she has to, she has to let him go so he can keep moving forward. Mary recognized Jesus as soon as what happened?
I don't know what I did. I just put Mary.
That's it. When he said her name.
Oh,
Mary.
okay, yeah. When he called her name Mary. Okay.
Yeah. Jesus did not want Mary to hold on to him because why?
Had not ascended to God.
When Jesus said to Mary, don't hold on to me, it does not mean she could not touch him, but that she could not keep him on earth as his mission wasn't complete until he ascended and sat at the right hand of God to be our advocate. So she couldn't have him stay there forever. She says, oh, never, never, maybe she said something, I'll never, never, never leave or something like that. And that's just not possible. What did Jesus want Mary to do?
Tell my brother.
Right. When Jesus told Mary to go tell his brothers, did he mean his real brothers?
No.
Who else could he have meant?
His disciples.
Although his brothers were probably there, that's true.
Uh-huh. Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news. I had seen the Lord, and she told them that he had said these things to her.
Right. So by this time, she would have been, even though we don't have the reference for it, she would have been the second to have come back to the disciples because the women would have been the first, right? The other three ladies would have come first, then her, because she was behind them as far as getting Peter and John and these things. Mary was probably not the first to tell the disciples that she had seen the Lord. Who else would have said the same thing?
The other ladies, women.
Right. Who else would have told the disciples that something happened at the tomb?
John and Peter.
Right. Many of the disciples were gathered in the upper room with the door locked. They were afraid for their lives. If this was a case put forth to prove Jesus rose from the dead, so far, who were the eyewitnesses of the resurrected Jesus?
Mary Magdalene, Mary, Salome, and Joanna.
Right. So far, who has seen the physical evidence of the open tomb, the angels, and his body being gone?
The soldiers, the women, and Peter and John.
Right. So, yeah. So there's a lot of actual evidence, which is really good that it was in there. It's actually good that the disciples didn't believe because we have so much more evidence because they didn't believe than if they did. Okay, so we get to our first crossword. So Peter, John, and Mary at the tomb. Number 3, Mary ran to the two apostles, John and
Peter.
Okay. Number 4, what had Mary seen rolled away from the tomb?
Stone.
One down. Who did Mary think Jesus was?
Gardener.
And 2, who did Mary see inside the tomb?
Angel.
And 5, where did Peter and John run to?
Tomb.
So, yeah. Okay. So I'll go ahead and stop the recording.